We are back. Senators, Twins, baseball, past, present, and future. My name is Ralph Tyko. I'm with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We have a full house today. We have two of our co-hosts. Ronnie Rabinowitz is here. Rabinonovitz.
Hi, Ralph. How are you, buddy?
How are you, my friend?
Good.
George
How are
Case
you?
III, you are here.
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hey, and Chad Rust, our third host in the booth, is on the DL. Can you give me an
Still
update,
on the DL.
Ronnie, on how he's doing?
Yeah. He's doing a little bit better. I saw him the other day, but he texted me this morning and he said he was really sick today, so he couldn't go on. But his color was better than the first time I saw him, so thank God he's coming along slowly.
Good, good. We have two guests. I'm going to go ladies first, and I'm going to have Bill Hall, who is not really a guest. He's a regular on the airways. He's an author. He's a commissioner up in Oregon. He's a Renaissance man. He's all those things. So I don't consider him to be a guest. He's been on the airways many, many times. But first time here, so I guess on this program, I guess he really is. Bill Hall, welcome, and you brought a guest with you who has a dad with a senator background, as does George Case have a dad with a senator background. Bill, introduce your guest if you would.
Oh, it is a pleasure, and it is an honor to be here and to introduce our guest, Irene Hodges, the daughter of Gil Hodges, who, of course, in addition to probably being best remembered for his stellar playing career with the Brooklyn and Los Angeles Dodgers and his managing career with the New York Mets, also spent 5 summers in Washington, D.C. as manager of the Senators. And Irene Hodges, good morning. Welcome. Thanks for joining us all today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hey, thank you for being here, Irene. What a thrill.
It is a great thrill, Irene.
Thank you.
Irene, I wonder how many people don't think that Ron Hodges is your sister.
My brother.
Is your brother.
Oh, yeah, the catcher.
Yeah,
but no relation, right?
Yes.
Way back with the Mets, and but there is no relation. Your dad was very, very, very special, and as was George Case's dad. George, you have a guest today, and this is all going to tie in because we're going to talk about managerial techniques, and it's all going to tie into the Washington Senators, if not the old Washington Senators, the new Washington Senators. So, George, if you would introduce your guest.
Yeah, well, I'm very much happy that I was able to talk to Eddie Waters the other day, and Eddie agreed to come on, and I know we're looking forward to having him talk about his baseball career. And I first really met Eddie and knew of him when he played for my dad up in Oneonta, New York in 1969 and 70. And then Eddie spent a year, I think, in Fort Lauderdale, and then began a stellar baseball coaching career in the high school at St. Thomas Aquinas, brought in many championship teams. And Eddie, my dad always said Eddie had a great baseball mind, and I'm so happy that he was able to do that. And we'll talk about Eddie's experiences in Oneonta and coaching, and I'm looking forward to it.
Beautiful. I want to start with Irene. Irene, do you have memories of your dad managing in Washington?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I remember when he made the decision to manage. My dad was very, very close to Frank Slocum, who was the assistant commissioner of baseball under Ford Frick, I believe. And he was his true confidant when it came to anything with baseball. And I remember my dad being closed in his bedroom for hours, which is so unlike him because he wasn't really a phone person. And it was then that he made the decision to do it. It was a tremendous decision for him. I think he knew that his playing days were pretty much over, and he had a lot of health issues. His knees were bad, and he knew it was over. He knew that the Dodgers, I believe, sent him back to the Mets so he could finish his career in New York. And I don't know if it was going to the American League was a tremendous difference for him because his whole life, baseball life, had been a National League. And taking on an undertaking like Washington at that time was a tremendous decision for him. But he decided to do it. He was very indebted to George Selkirk for giving him the opportunity as a new manager to go to Washington. And that was how he decided to do it. It was a decision between him and Frank Slocum, and they felt it was the right place for him to continue into baseball.
Irene, I wanted to mention one thing, if I could just step in here a second. And
sure.
My dad and your dad were quite friendly. My dad was managing in Hawaii for 2 years and would send some of his players up to your dad. So your father and my father would talk from time to time about, various players in the organization, who were playing for Hawaii and were ready to come up to the big club. So, I obviously knew your dad very well as a player with the Dodgers and then with the Mets. And when he went to Washington, I'm not sure you were aware of it, but there was a one-game interim when Eddie Yost managed, waiting for your dad to come down from New York. And Eddie took the reins for one game, and then your father took over. And one of my good friends, who you might have heard his name, was Russ White, who was a great sports writer in Washington, and very good friends with your father.
I am actually friends with him on Facebook.
Oh, are you? Well, yeah. Russ is. I met Russ last year for the first time. We had talked a couple times over on Facebook, but the first time I had a chance to really speak with him. A very nice man and very complimentary about your dad. They were very good friends.
He writes the most beautiful stories, really beautiful.
Yes.
Yes, he does. He's a true storyteller. There are some reporters who are good reporters. They get the facts.
Right.
They tell you what happened. But Russ is one of those type of journalists who really captures the human dimension so beautifully. So, Irene, could I ask you a question about this transition? You were talking about the fact that your dad's playing career was truly winding down. I've gone over the statistics that in 1962, when he joined the Mets, he did win the starting first base job and was the starting first baseman for about 2 months and really was kind of looking like the Gil Hodges of old. But unfortunately, his body, I think especially his bad knee, betrayed him. And after that, he was pretty much a pinch hitter. So I was recently reading a book by the sports writer Maury Allen where he interviewed your mother and talked about this transition, and she said she was happy for him to have the opportunity, but she said she also cried because she knew she would never get to see him play again. And so for you, your brother, your sisters, how did that transition, do you remember the kind of the emotional impact knowing that your dad was still going to be in baseball but no longer as a player, and how you saw that at the time?
My parents told us, that he was going to be going to Washington and that he wasn't going to be playing anymore. And it was very sad. It was almost like sad for him, not for ourselves, because it really didn't matter to us so much, but sad for him because he loved baseball. He felt so privileged to be able to go to work and love what he did so well. And it was sad for that, that part of it. But also, he was so fortunate to be able to continue in baseball. And, the saddest part was going to Washington, who really didn't was a football place. They really wasn't. They really weren't very baseball minded.
Right.
That was tremendous.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That was a tremendous change to sit in. We were always with people that loved baseball and loved the Mets and loved the Dodgers. So now we went to Washington where, he was booed. And it was a tough transition in that respect. That was very difficult.
What were his trepidations about managing?
He was a very strict individual, and he really didn't. There was no gray area, very little, if any. It was either black or white. You did the right thing or you did the wrong thing. You gave 100%. Anything less than that, he would never accept from anybody. And I think the fact that he had to deal with so many individuals, none of whom he really knew because they weren't national leaguers. And at that time, there wasn't, the American League didn't play the National League like they do now. Mm-hmm. So I think it was the fact of dealing with taking a team that was not doing well, never did well, and having to deal with players and try to turn that around, try to teach them to win.
Eddie, what's that like? What's that like, dealing with a team and teaching them to win?
Well, a lot of times it's a chemistry thing where you might have the most talented team, but they are individuals. And you might have a team that doesn't have that much talent, and they mesh together and they do the little things to win games and pull for each other. I think that pretty much, if we want to use a case history, the word case, I think, when I played for Georgia in 1969, out of that team, only one player actually had a cup of coffee in the big leagues. That was Jimmy Didle, our catcher. We had a lot of overachievers on that team, and George brought us together as a team, and we ended up becoming a championship team. And which was a great thing because for George, at that time he had been in professional baseball 33 years, and that was his first championship team. So I feel honored that I was part of that championship team that he was the manager of. And we're going to have in 2 years a 50-year anniversary in Oneonta, New York, and we'll be honoring George Case at that get-together. We've been in touch with all the guys that are still hanging in there. And Nick Lambros, who is our general manager, I visit him up in Oneonta almost every summer. We're going to put together a thing on that team. And as I said, it was a team of overachievers and guys that played for each other, had each other's back. And we learned how to win under George Case, and that was a great experience.
Eddie,
Where is Oneonta in
that
relationship to Syracuse or Albany?
I'm sorry?
Where is Oneonta in relationship?
It's about 20 miles. It's about 20 miles from Cooperstown, which is great, and it's about an hour from Syracuse.
Irene, this is Ron Rabinonovitz. I met your father several times. I was a very dear friend of Jackie Robinson's, and Jackie introduced me to Gil many, many times. He was a great guy, wonderful, wonderful man. I just loved him. He was a great Dodger, great ball player, and I hope that someday he'll be in the Hall of Fame. He deserves it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, we all, Ronnie, we all
feel that we're all advocates in credit, and to the point where there was some concern that your brother had that the overplay on the social media didn't do your dad justice when it came to voting this last go around. Is that in your mindset?
Not one bit. Not one bit.
Okay. Good.
I mean, we're brother and sister, and we do disagree on things, and that's one of the things we disagree on.
Yeah, I really don't think it hurt his cause. I just don't know, for all the efforts we did, that it helped, because it's one thing that's become clear to me, unfortunately, is that the Baseball Hall of Fame voting system is a very closed system. The petition we compiled, the statistical report that we compiled and sent to the committee, we found out that it was never even presented to
Never
them.
even read. It was never even presented. So
yeah, and we never...
Can I say something to Irene real quick? Irene, this is Ed Waters. In 1971, when I was with the Fort Lauderdale Yankees, and I was playing for Bobby Cox, by the way, I played against Gil Hodges Jr. He was with the Pompano Beach Mets at that time. And he was with the Pompano Beach Mets. And also Yogi Berra Jr. was on that team. So I played against your brother back in 1971. So that was
he had a very short career. He got hurt, and he really didn't play very long. I mean,
right, and that was in 71 when I played against him.
Eddie and Irene, are you parents?
Yes, I have 3 daughters. I have 5 grandchildren. They're all here for this weekend. We've got 3 birthdays and a christening going on, all during this weekend. So very busy.
Irene, are
wonderful,
you a parent?
Wonderful time.
Are you a parent, Irene?
I have 2 girls, and I have 5 grandchildren also.
Wonderful.
Okay, I want to ask you both, a little different. This time we're going to start with Eddie. What do you pass on? What have you passed on to your children that you learned from George?
Well, the one thing I really learned from George was to fail is not to try. If you give everything you have, nobody can ask more of you than that. And that's always been a philosophy of mine, coaching. And I was blessed to have coaches like George Case, Jack Kaiser at St. John's University, my high school coach. I had very positive coaches that I tried to use things I learned from all of them. George Case to me was, and all the people I met in baseball, and I say this without any doubt at all, he was the best person I ever met. And everyone I've ever met in baseball that played for George or played with George or knew George says the same thing. And it's an amazing legacy that he brought to baseball. He was such a gentleman, and it was so genuine. The thing that he hated more than anything was when he had to release a ball player. He dreaded that. And he was just such a good person that his baseball was, to me, secondary to his being a great person. And I try to emulate things he taught me.
That George's dad and George have in common with Irene's dad. What did you pass on, Irene, to your children that Gil instilled in you, not maybe that relates to managing to the human frailty of life, or whatever I'm trying to say, but what was it that Gil passed on from his managing that you pass on to your children? Great question, huh, Irene? I should do this professionally.
Well, I think that he taught me to be a good person, to be a person that not other people, but that I was proud of. And to look in that mirror every night or that morning and say, and be happy with who I saw. And that was very, very important to him. And he taught me that. And I try to teach my children that too, and my grandchildren, that the most important thing in life is to be a good person to everybody, not just to some, not just to people you work for, but to everybody you meet in the street. And I like that quality. I think it's a wonderful quality he gave me.
Nice. Really nice.
Sure is.
Ronnie, you had a hero as a dad. I'll ask you the same thing. What would you pass on to your children, and in your case, your grandchildren too?
Well, I have a dad that was a true role model for me. I admired him a lot. He was a lawyer, later a federal judge, but he always fought for the underdog. He was very active in civil rights and racial things way before it was popular. He helped everybody. He could work with a working man or walk down the street with the President of the United States, and
he literally
the
did.
Same. And he literally did. And he literally did. And he used to tell me, just remember this, that everyone has to put their pants on one leg at a time. And it doesn't matter if you're a president or a governor or a senator or a working man or a salesman or whatever. And he treated everybody the same. But he was a real fighter for the underdog. And he helped a lot of people, new Americans that came from Germany and Poland during the war. He helped them get settled. He got them clothing and furniture from friends of his that owned businesses, and got them settled. I just recently got a letter from a son of a refugee who said that he remembered that my dad got them clothing, got them furniture, appliances, got them settled, and then he said that his mother had complained that her paycheck was being shorted, and he went personally to that employer and got the back pay and brought it to her as a check. So, I mean, that's the type of guy he was.
Beautiful. Bill Hall, really I'm going to ask you the same question. I know a lot about you, but I've never gotten into if it was your dad who was the big influence on your life that made you the person you are today, and what do you pass on from he or she?
Oh, both my parents, really, I think. One thing that my dad and Irene's dad have in common is they both saw combat with the Marines in World War II, and that is something else that plays into my special affection for Gil Hodges. But, I learned so much from my father, and I try to pass it on to my kids, and I hope someday when I do have grandkids to them as well. One of his favorite sayings was, you only get out of something what you put into it. In other words, it doesn't always happen in life, but usually reward comes from sustained effort, giving something your best. And if you're going to do something, you do it right, you give it your all. And I think that has been a huge influence on my life. And, he said this was a saying in the Marines that I think I've also put to use a lot in my life. He said the old Marines slogan was, we do the difficult right away, the impossible takes a little longer.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Very nice. Eddie, it sounds to me like George was like a second father. George Jr. was like a second dad to you. Was your dad that way? Did the teachings overlap? How did your dad prepare you for a career in ball, in coaching, in managing?
Well, a funny story to start with my dad. I was the bat boy on his Little League team when I was about 5.5, 6 years old. So that means I've been in baseball for about 65 years. And I'm a left-hander. A left-handed pitcher was throwing a no-hitter against his Little League team, and it was 2 out in the last inning. And they said, well, you might as well put Eddie up to hit against him. So my dad did, and I hit one over third base and broke the kid's no-hitter up with 2 out in the last inning, and the kid was crying his eyes out. So that's my first baseball memory. And again, my dad always took me to see the Dodgers, and so I grew up loving the Dodgers. And I never was forced into playing baseball. I loved it because I was around it. My dad was involved for years in fast pitch softball. I used to be the bat boy for that. I didn't break any no-hitters up in fastball, pitch softball. But Dad loved baseball, and he, like I said, never forced me into it. I just loved being around it, and it became a big part of my life. And when I played in Oneonta in 1969, my parents were about the same age as George, and they would come up and stay at the hotel in the beginning of the season. When George, before the family came, he was at that hotel, and they just loved George, loved talking to him. He was so humble and so kind that he found time for everyone. So when I was playing for George, it was kind of like an extension of having another dad. And when my dad wasn't there, that's what I looked at George as. He was that kind of person you could go to and ask for advice. Humble and kind person. I mean, those are the qualities that you look for in a human being. And sometimes when you go in pro ball, it's a business, and it's cruel. It's unrequited love sometimes, baseball. But you always love baseball. And he was just such a great influence on that whole team. Anyone, as I said, you talk to anyone who's on that team, and you ask them about George Case, and they just talk in glowing terms. And I played for some managers I wouldn't talk of in glowing terms. But
are you proud, George the Third?
Yeah, I am, and I really appreciate Eddie saying those things, because that pretty much mirrored my experiences, as I've mentioned before on these shows growing up. And my dad told me, he said, I love you, you're my son, whether you ever picked up a ball and bat, I still love you. And I just happen to like the game like Eddie. I was around it from my earliest memory. And to hear other people talk about my dad as the kind of person that I knew as my father, it's very heartwarming, and I really appreciate Eddie's comments. And I can tell you for a fact, and I've told Eddie and a lot of the people, Nick Lambros and the people in Oneonta, my dad absolutely loved coaching Oneonta. He had an opportunity to deal with a lot of young ball players like Eddie, just out of college, their first experience as a professional, and he wanted to teach them not only baseball but about life and how to conduct yourself as a professional off the field.
Well,
that's for sure.
Irene, are you still a baseball fan? Do you follow the Dodgers or the Mets? Or?
I follow the Mets. I follow the Dodgers a little bit. Dodgers have always, even though the Mets are from New York, my dad played for the Mets. Right. The Dodgers are always the Dodgers. But, that'll never change. That'll never change.
Right.
Irene,
good.
We've talked so much about Rachel Robinson and her being a partner with Jackie. Your mom was along the same lines of being a partner with your dad. And people don't realize, being a baseball player, you're gone like 6 months of the year, quite a bit. And the mother figure has to assume a lot of the credit for whatever success her husband has, because without the peace of mind of knowing that the family's okay, you can't possibly succeed on the field. Can you tell us something about your mom that we as baseball fans? I'm a Met fan in New York. I hate to say it to you, Irene. I was a Giant fan growing up. I know your family's going to all listen to this.
Bernie will have to wear black and orange. Halloween was all work.
Right. There were stories that your dad would not allow black and orange in the house.
Honestly, it was my mother. It wasn't my dad. It was my mother.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, she grew up in Brooklyn and a very fierce Dodgers fan, right?
Long before she met my dad. Absolutely.
Right.
She was a huge baseball fan. She really was.
There's no orange
and
black.
The Mets was such a compilation of both the Giants, the Yankees with their pinstripes, and the Dodgers. And they tried to sell it as a city team. Was there some adjustment for you and your dad with that? Was the old Dodger thing, was that so deep that it wasn't the same with the Mets, or what was that like?
I think Dodgers were family. And I believe that, they all came to our house. We grew up with their children. We were all family. It was a different era. I don't think everybody wanted the other person to do well. There was no competition. as far as that was concerned. And we were family with the Dodgers.
Who was your dad's best friend on the Dodgers? If he had just one?
I might say Pee Wee Reese was his closest friend. He was very close to Jackie.
He was.
They were all close. They were all close. Carl Erskine was from Pennsylvania.
Oh, wonderful.
I mean, they were all close. They lived in. My grandmother used to cook for all of them. They used to come to our house, and my grandmother used to make these big Italian meals for all of them. So it was
different. It was like the neighborhood then. The team was part of the neighborhood. They didn't live in gated communities.
They lived in the community, right in the neighborhood.
They shopped.
I mean, my dad used to walk 5 blocks to pick up pizza on Friday nights in the winter when he was home. I mean, that's just the way he was.
Did I add something into that? Did I add something to that?
Please, Eddie.
Can you imagine what it was like to have Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, and Duke Snider all playing within a 7-mile radius at the same time? I mean, we all playing center field. How awesome is that? Coming off of Joe DiMaggio, of course, in New York. And Duke Snider's name was Edwin. So when my dad was about 80, I've got a beautiful photo of my dad and Duke Snider and myself, the 3 Edwins. And Duke Snider, even though Mantle and Mays
that
were
is
category.
really cool.
That's so cool.
Snider was my hero, Duke Snider.
Eddie, we grew up in the same boroughs. I born in New York and raised in Queens, roots in Brooklyn, and when we grew up, it was almost a birthright to have the World Series played in your city.
Right.
Every year, literally, from 49 on up. It was tremendous being, and every corner had the arguments, Willie, Mickey, or the Duke.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
we wait.
Again, the chills, right?
Who did your dad respect on other teams most? Who were some of the, not the superstars, but who were some of the players that he respected? Maybe the overachievers. Irene.
He would never speak of anybody like that. He really wouldn't. He would never say anything like that. He never, at least, to his family, he would never say anything bad about anybody.
Oh, no, not bad. I didn't say bad. I said, who did he respect as perhaps just as foes? Who were his...
A player from another team,
Yes.
Like maybe Bobby Thompson on the Giants. I read somewhere somebody said
my
it
God,
was like,
my mother wouldn't even sit next to him at dinners.
Oh, wow. Oh, especially after 1951.
Any kind of dinners that they had, my mother wouldn't even sit next to him. It was very bad until she got older.
Oh, yeah. But I remember...
And she meant it. It wasn't just a cutesy thing. She meant it, huh?
Oh, my goodness.
You really meant it? Oh, yeah.
Don't even names.
But there is kind of a fun picture sequence from spring training in 1956. Your dad and Gil with Bobby Thompson, who by that time is with the Braves, and each of them have a bat in hand, and they're kind of pretending to strangle him with the bats, but they're both breaking up laughing. They really couldn't carry it off very well.
A lot faster than my mother.
Yeah, I can understand that. Your mom sounds like a very passionate person.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. And
this
your
is,
dad's very easygoing, kind of, stoic. Not exactly stoic, but just kind of found a way to take everything in stride. That baseball, even the best teams lose 1 out of every 3 games. So it's a lesson we all learn from the game, I think. That
and the best players fail 7 out of 10 times.
Right, right.
You can make the Hall of Fame and fail
Mm-hmm.
7 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's a humbling game. That's a very good description.
Can I add something to that? On that
this has
same
been
idea?
a terrific show. I would like you all to come back and keep coming back. And I want to close it by getting all of your final thoughts. I'm going to start, again, ladies first. Irene, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything you'd like to leave us with?
I would like to say that I think my father would be so humbled by the outpouring of admiration that has come his way. And he never felt that way about himself, ever, ever, ever. But after so many years since his passing, so many people remember him with such warmth and such admiration. I think he just would be completely humbled by it. And as nice as the Hall of Fame is, and as wonderful and deserving as he should have it, this is so much more to him. And I know it would mean so much more to him. So I thank everyone for that.
That's great.
Nice.
That's really great.
I'll go to, wow, I'm a little choked up on that one. I couldn't have asked asked a question and gotten a better response.
Fabulous.
Eddie, please, Edwin, if you will, sir. Final thoughts.
Well, to be on a show that is talking and honoring people like Gil Hodges and George Case, this to me is one of the great honors of my coaching baseball career, to be on something that has to do with those two gentlemen. When I was finally done playing my baseball career in 1972 and I went into teaching and coaching, I figured that was going to be my job until I got my next job in baseball. So it's 45 years later, I'm still teaching and coaching at the same high school in St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, so I feel really blessed. I'm still waiting for that baseball job. But to be on a show with these two men and to be with George's son, Gil Hodges' daughter, what a thrill for me. It's just tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Beautiful.
Thank you. That's great.
I'll go to Bill Hall, who is really a guest and a regular at the same time. Bill Hall.
It has been a great conversation, but I've got to agree with you, Ralph. I think we're just getting started with this. I think it will be fun to continue the conversation with more about the remarkable things that Gil Hodges did during his tenure as manager of the Washington Senators. And I can share some stories. Have you ever had Dave Baldwin on the program? If not, he would be a great guest. The sidearm pitcher who Gil brought to the major leagues as a 29-year-old, and he has shared with me some stories about the amazing level of preparation that Gil and his coaching staff did, and it shows how he got the absolute most out of a challenging situation, to say the least.
Well, I'll tell you what. The rumor is that Gil and Jerry Grody were the only two humans that believed in spring training in 1969 that the Mets would win it all. So
I can believe that.
Is that true, Irene? To the best of your knowledge, did he have thought? Did he bring home thoughts of, wow, we have something here. This could be lightning in a bottle.
I don't know that he felt so strongly. I think that he knew the quality of his team and the potential they each had. Whether that holds true for a whole season, for that whole long season, that makes you the winner. How, not April, but August.
Oh, yes.
So, they had a great pitching staff, tremendous pitching staff. And a lot of that they owed to Rube Walker. Rube Walker was his pitching coach, and he had the utmost respect for Rube. So he was very hopeful, and he rightfully so.
And Rube was a teammate. He was an old Dodger.
Well, Dodger, sure.
Yep. He was a coach with the Dodgers. So I like the way
and a catcher with
admiration in baseball for the fellow participants, and that folks like you can pay homage to those who taught and were responsible. This is great. This is terrific.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go to you, Ronnie. Anything you'd like to
Well, I think it's such an honor to be here with Ed and Irene and George. It's always fun being with you. And Bill, we've become friends on another podcast. It's just a great thing. I've never played professional ball. I played Little League and high school ball, but I love the game so much. I had great admiration for Gil Hodges. I just loved him. I talked to him many times. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. He loved Jackie. Jackie loved him. And Jackie, of course, is my very dearest friend. And we were very close. So it's really an honor to be on the show. And Ralph, you're terrific. Thank you.
Well, don't overstate it. I'm here. I showed up on time. That's enough.
Hey, you're the founder of the feast. The father of the Comfortably Zoned Network. Without you, none of us would have gathered together.
That's right.
Absolutely. We'd all be doing something constructive. George Case III, take us out.
I wanted to thank Irene and Eddie for their comments, both of them. I mean, I feel very fortunate because I did not meet Gil, but I certainly knew of him, and I know that my dad and Gil had talked many, many times. And of course, Eddie, playing for my father and all the nice things he had to say, and I grew up with that. And Eddie, one thing, and I'm sure your Irene, your dad would probably say the same thing. My father used to always tell his players, look, I can understand an era of omission, but I cannot understand an era of commission. In other words, you boot a ball or whatever it is, right. But you have to learn and you have to know how to handle yourself off the field. And that's what he expected. And he expected his players, just like Gil, in a situation, if you have to hit behind the runner or you have to do something to score a run by, getting the runner advanced into scoring position, that's what you're supposed to do. My dad and Eddie would attest to it when he was coaching, playing with Oneonta, when Eddie was playing. They played small ball. They didn't play long ball, and that's how my dad coached and the game he believed in, and he loved his players, and I know Gil was the same way. And for me, and Irene mentioned, George Selkirk. George and my dad played against one another. When George was with the Yankees, my dad was playing with Washington. And Bill mentioned Dave Baldwin. It could be that, someday we'll have Dave on the show. Dave is a Renaissance man, has his Ph.D., and in fact, Dave played for my dad in Hawaii and told me, he said, I'll never forget when your father told me when I was going to be called up to the big club, and I was playing in Vancouver. Your father calls me aside and says, Dave, you're heading to Washington, and we're going to play for Gil Hodges. So this has been a thrill for me to talk to both of you, and I've really enjoyed it.
Hey, I can't close it out without asking Eddie to speak to some of the players that he's coached along the way and who he's proud of, if you will.
Mike Stanley had a tremendous career in the big leagues as a catcher with the Texas, the Yankees, Boston. Had a tremendous career. We have two big leaguers right now, Robbie Scott with the Red Sox, left-handed specialist, and then Carlos Asuaje, who's a second baseman with San Diego, was playing against my Marlins at 1 o'clock today, who's done very well this year.
Wow.
We've had over the years 10 big leaguers from our program at St. Thomas. So As the head coach right now, I coach for was the number 1 pick with the Braves in '97, Troy Cameron, and he's now the head coach. I'm still associated as an assistant coach with our program at St. Thomas. So we've had a pretty good run, and we have some pretty good players. We probably had 40 or 50 drafted over the past 40-some years.
Wonderful.
Hey, Irene, do your grandchildren have any inclinations to play baseball?
No, not at all.
Okay. Just had to ask.
But I do have 2 grandsons that play baseball, so.
Oh, good.
You never know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, I'm thrilled.
I had one thing on that. My grandson, who's wearing my number, is a senior this year at our high school, and I'm hoping he's going to have a really big year, and his younger brother's coming in next year. So I feel amiss if I didn't mention my grandson's baseball.
My grandson wears number 42. And my grandson wears number 42.
Playing Little League.
Yeah.
Nice.
Little League. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
I hope I haven't shortchanged you at all. It's been a full booth, and I hope you, like I say, I hope you'll come back. And I'm just going to end the show by imploring you all to keep on keeping on. And the audience the same. We'll be back next week, and I hope our guests will join us again in the very near future. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.